I thought I'd do something a little bit different today or tonight. Instead of a game idea, I wanted to talk about what makes a good story without the common tropes of hero and villain uh, or revenge story or from zero to hero or from nobody to legend. I want to talk about how to make stories without these common tropes. Like, for example, for the God of War series, from the first all the way up to the current one. And I want to talk about how certain games and movies succeed in it, and where others, like The Last of Us Part 2, fail in it. Okay, let's get started. So, for a story like The God of War, there are no heroes in there. There is just a redeemer, Kratos, the God of War, on his path of vengeance and on his path of atonement. He's not the hero. He's just a villain. Whereas, for a similar story to that is Afro Samurai. He's not a hero. He's not looking for atonement. He's on a path of vengeance, and he will cut down anyone in his way, just like Kratos. But what makes these stories so great, without there being a hero and a villain, is that technically Afro Samurai still has that villain. It's Justice, the new number one in the first series. Or Ares, the God of War. And on a technical term, like I said before, there are no heroes. And technically, Ares is somewhat of the villain, but in a sense, he's just doing his own thing for his own personal goals. Because like many others say in Greek mythology, their definition of what a hero is completely different from our own understanding of what it means to be a hero. And the developers of God of War did an excellent job in explaining that. But I want to make this video in a way of helping people understand that you don't have to follow the common tropes, and how to make a good story without the common tropes of hero and villain, and without maybe even a path of revenge, which was the new style of story. But in these times, these recent stories, and not just video games, but also in movies, they've added, woke politics to it. Or they've tried to, give off an inclusion vibe to where no one is the hero, no one is the villain. It's up to the audience to decide or choose who's the righteous one or who they should favor, which creates a terrible story. Because if you're letting the audience choose who's the hero and who's the villain, or who's the right one, it becomes a bad story, because the audience has no control over any characters. Or if you make a video game where you have no true control over a video game character, unlike, for example, Mass Effect, you get to choose on how the character will be. But unlike in Ghost of Tsushima, while you have somewhat control over how to fight in Ghost of Tsushima, you do not have the power to choose, how you fight it in forms of story. And for spoilers in Ghost of Tsushima, you don't get to choose whether or not to poison the Mongolian warriors. You just do it, despite what your uncle says. Once again, sorry for the spoilers, but in that one scene I'm referring to is that you have an idea that is given to you by a thief, in a sense, which is we should poison them, their food and their crops, or whatever it was. It's been a while since I played the game. I can't remember what it was that they had poisoned. I think it was the goat milk that they poisoned. But instead of you choosing to opt in or opt out of it, you instead are forced into it. Whereas instead of it giving you that choice of saying, no, I think I'll choose the honorable path, it's no, you're choosing, it forces you to say, I will choose the assassin path. Because the Ghost of Tsushima somewhat has a two-path style game to it. You can choose to be a shinobi, or you can choose to be a samurai, one with honor. But while this game is pretty damn good, it does have some failings to it, despite its historical inaccuracies, which is it does not show you how there are many different forms of honor instead of just the honorable samurai. Nor does it show you that nor does it give you the choice to be either a shinobi or to be a samurai, because while you do get to choose at the end to be an honorable samurai or to be a dishonorable person, not even a shinobi or an assassin of honor, you just choose to spare your uncle and say, I am without honor, I will let him live, or to kill your uncle to show that you have honorable, to give him an honorable death. That the argument is that in Ghost of Tsushima, you are, from your uncle's perspective, is that you are living without honor, but from the protagonist's perspective is that you are a slave to it. Instead, it should have been, I choose a different style of honor. And once again, this is nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with the game other than what I'm pointing out. It's not a bad game. It's just that it has these small, insignificant inconsistencies of, or inaccuracies of what would have made it perfect. Almost perfect. It is indeed a good game, but the story of Ghost of Tsushima would have been better if it had these options. And on another thing, going back to The Last of Us Part 2, is that it was a flop of a story. While it did have good gameplay, great graphics, excellent voice acting, it had terrible story, terrible characters, and terrible plots. Because if you wanted to create a revenge story, don't give us the chance to fail at it and then just be, at the end of it all, give us a I'm gonna prove that I'm better than you by letting you go after I did everything against the wishes of the people that love me. And also, it had a lot of woke politics into it. Like, in let's say, for example, in a zombie apocalypse, who has time to be a bigot? Who has the time or energy to be anti-LGBT in a zombie apocalypse? You need all the manpower you can get. So it shouldn't matter what you are, who you love, or how you express yourself in a zombie apocalypse. Because if I'm in one, I don't care if the strongest guy is a gay white guy married to an Asian trans man. Even though that combination in itself is strange or impossible or weird, wouldn't make sense. But back to the topic, is that how Last of Us Part 2 story flops. Like I said, there are no heroes in Last of Us Part 2, which is not the problem. The problem is it's filled with contradictions. It has no choices where the player has control over. It only has choices where the story has control over. You're not in control of the Last of Us Part 2 story. As a matter of fact, you're not in control of the previous Last of Us story. You're only in control of the character, which is which is nothing wrong with it for the first one. And what I mean by you're not in control is that you don't get to choose how the story plays out, which goes back to the Mass Effect series. In that game, you do get to control how the story plays out, just like in Skyrim or in almost any Elder Scrolls video game. You have the power to control how that story plays out. For example, Skyrim, Elder Scrolls 5, Skyrim, or is it 6? Yeah, it's 5. Skyrim. You get to choose to become a dragonborn of legend and honorable pacifist by destroying all the Daedric weapons or going against the Daedra, or you can become a dragonborn who is the listener of the Dark Brotherhood and is the leader of the Thieves Guild who steals and kills, or you can be a dragonborn who's leader of the Companions, an honorable guild of mercenary. I wouldn't say maybe mercenaries, but an honorable guild of warriors who follow a righteous path, who are trying to clean themselves of the Daedric blood of Hersing, the Daedric Prince of Hunt and Night, or follow neither one of those paths, to be the hero that unites all of Tamriel by siding with the Imperials, or to be the one who gives Skyrim its independence by siding with the Stormcloaks. That's the power of choosing how the story works and goes through. Other than being forced on a straight path of where you play as a character and beating section by section, which is what God of War does. You're pretty much not given a choice of how Kratos can become this pacifist warrior. It's just a section by section straight path. You can do it in an excellent way, or you can do it in a terrible way. But the right way and the wrong way to do it is the God of War style, which is the right way, or the Last of Us Part 2 style, which is the wrong way. It's like in God of War, where there are no heroes or villains, just like with Last of Us Part 2, the story can become the story in God of War can become good because it's a path of redemption. Then it becomes a path of, while maintaining the path of vengeance, it's still a path of redemption that leads to where you find out that your path of redemption has flopped on you. You fail to redeem yourself in your own eyes because you could not escape your murderous intent in the first game. And while you have been forgiven for your sins, you will never be cleansed of the nightmares. Thus you choose to end it all. But they refuse to let you end it all. Instead, they give you somewhat of this grand and motorcyclist, this so-called great prize, a prize similar to Hercules's. Hi, that was my car. But what was I at? Oh yeah, that's right. Is that it gives you a prize that you never wanted, which is, while a lot of people, greedy people, would love to become a god, but to become the god of war is not to a wise person, isn't the best prize there is. But instead, Kratos does indeed accept the prize of being the next god of war. It stays, but in between games of 1 and 2, you find yourself on a path of, freeing your brother from the grips of Thanatos. And ultimately failing. Thus, this is all just pushing the main protagonist, Kratos, back to this path of vengeance, back to this path of bloodlust, when he's just trying to redeem himself, to be better. But it's like in God of War 1 through 3 and all of their spin-offs, or I think they're spin-offs, the story does not let him until God of War 2016, when we reach Norse mythology. And in the Greek mythology of God of War, it's broken down where Kratos is not a villain, whereas he's not a hero. He's just a guy trying to redeem himself, but he fails to redeem himself because he's just been pushed by the Greek gods' arrogance and selfishness and own sins of, well, you mess with the man's family, you mess with the man's chance at happiness, you mess with him so many times that there is only so much one person can take, that he's led to the brink of madness, wrath, where he's willing to cause Armageddon just to get his vengeance and get back. He's willing to become the end of all, to become death itself towards the gods. Because he says in God of War 2 at the end, he doesn't want to destroy Olympus. He just wants Zeus. He only wants the death of Zeus. But it is revealed to him that he has no choice but to destroy Olympus in order to get to Zeus, because Zeus has done too much damage. had you been given the choice, or had Zeus not gone as far as he did, maybe Kratos would have allowed Zeus to just live, and Kratos just instead have used the threads of fate to undo many things. Because here's the thing that I made many years ago about there being a God of War 3 killer. What I mean by a God of War 3 killer is that Kratos in God of War 2 had the power to control his own fate after killing a few of the sisters of fate and trapping them in the past. He could have gone back in time and prevented himself from killing his wife and child. But instead, he only chooses to go back in time to prevent his death at the hands of Zeus. He goes back in time to prevent the fall of the Titans. He does not go back in time to prevent his ultimate downfall, which is a flaw within the God of War. And I hope you understand what I'm trying to say in terms of storytelling. There are good ways to have no choices. There are bad ways to have choices. To have no choices. There are good ways to have choices, and there are bad ways to have choices. The problem with having choices in a video game like Mass Effect, like choices like in what the heck? The light went out. There we go. Choices like in what was the name of that game? Jeez. Like in Infamous, that's what it was. Or choices like in God of War 5, not God of War, Grand Theft Auto 5. Yes, there are some choices you can make. While it does not affect the story much, you can indeed make choices in Grand Theft Auto 5. But, I don't know why I said but, because there are no buts to this. It's how you want to make a good game with no choices. Well, a good story with no choices is that you have to take away the option or the illusion that you have a choice in a game where there are no choices. Or if you want to create a game with choices that affect the story, you have to have those choices where, for example, you don't force force the player to play as a character they don't like, a character that is not likable, when they've been playing as a character that is likable, a character that we want to root for and see succeed. Whereas you play as a character you want to see dead. Or you be given a choice where you choose where, despite any option you take or choose, all options were bad. All options lead to your downfall. All choices that you make were meaningless. Which is what some people have said the Mass Effect franchise did in Mass Effect 3. At the end of it all choices were meaningless. Which I somewhat disagree with. Because while they could have expanded on, the choices instead of just giving us a fourth option. There could have been expansion to each and every single choice that was made, or a different story to each choice. Check out my Mass Effect 4 game idea that I made earlier. But this is getting a little bit too long, so I'll end it with this. When it comes to storytelling, and you want to escape the old style of hero and villain, or quest, or revenge quest, or bonding quest, try to create a story where you live long enough to see yourself become a hero, or you live long enough to become a villain, or where if you don't want hero and villain, create a story where the player gets to decide who becomes the hero and who becomes the villain, or who is the one that gets to decide who's right at the end, like in Detroit Become Human. Or you just wind up with a terrible story like Last of Us, or with a terrible ending like Mass Effect, like Mass Effect 3, or with terrible characters like Ride to Hell Retribution. That's all I got to say. Thank you and good night.